In the forgotten corner of the old city hospital, hidden deep within its labyrinthine corridors, lay the mortuary fridge, a cold, metallic chamber where the dead were stored, waiting for their final journey. The hospital was ancient, its walls steeped in the echoes of countless souls who had passed through its doors. But it was the fridge, not the hospital, that held the darkest secrets, where the line between life and death blurred in the chilling air. Emily, a young intern new to the hospital, was assigned a midnight shift. She was to check the refrigeration units, ensure the temperature was maintained, and that the bodies were logged correctly. It was a routine task, but one that filled her with an inexplicable sense of dread. The old nurses whispered about strange occurrences, about voices in the night and bodies that didn't stay still, but Emily dismissed them as superstitious nonsense. As the clock struck midnight, Emily descended into the bowels of the hospital, her footsteps echoing in the narrow, dimly lit corridor that led to the mortuary fridge. The air grew colder with each step, a biting chill that seeped into her bones. Finally, she reached the heavy steel door. It groaned as she pushed it open, revealing rows of metal drawers, each labeled with a name and a date, a silent archive of the dead. The cold hit her like a wall, and her breath turned to mist in the frigid air. She pulled out the first drawer, the sound of metal scraping against metal, setting her teeth on edge. Inside was a body, pale and still, covered by a thin sheet. Emily made a note of the details, her hands shaking slightly as she tried to ignore the unsettling feeling gnawing at her nerves. But then, she heard it, a faint whisper, barely audible over the hum of the refrigeration units. Her pen froze mid-sentence. She strained to listen, her heart beginning to race. The whisper came again, a breathy, rasping sound, like a voice carried on the wind. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice echoing in the cold, sterile room. The only response was the low hum of the machines and the relentless cold pressing in on her from all sides. Trying to steady her nerves, Emily moved to the next drawer. As she did, the whisper grew louder, more insistent. She could hear it now, a chorus of voices overlapping, whispering her name, calling her, beckoning her closer. Panic gripped her as she fumbled with the drawer, her hands shaking uncontrollably. The bodies were still, but she could feel eyes on her, unseen but undeniably present, watching her every move. Suddenly, the lights flickered, casting distorted shadows across the room. The air seemed to thicken, growing colder, as if the very essence of death had seeped into the room. The whispers turned to low moans, agonized and desperate. Emily gasped as she saw the sheet on one of the bodies move, a slow, deliberate shift as if something beneath it was trying to escape. She backed away, her breath coming in short, panicked bursts. But as she did, the drawers began to open on their own, one by one, the bodies within lying in unnatural, twisted positions. Their eyes were open, staring blankly at the ceiling, their mouths frozen in silent screams. Blood began to seep from their nostrils, their ears, their open wounds, forming a dark pool that slowly spread across the icy floor. Emily tried to run, but her legs felt heavy, her movements sluggish as if the cold was freezing her from the inside out. The whispers turned into cries, the voices of the dead rising in a crescendo of pain and anger. "Help us!" they cried, their words filled with a desperation that pierced through her terror. "You must help us." She reached the door, but it wouldn't budge. The room seemed to close in on her, the temperature plummeting even further until she could see frost forming on the metal surfaces. The voices were all around her now, loud and insistent, a cacophony of the damned.